Alright guys, so this lecture is about technology and written communication in the medical office. This is the start of getting into the skills that you're going to use every day. We talked a lot about you as a student, how to interact with patients, and now medicine and law, medicine and ethics, that type of thing. Now we're really getting into the hands-on applications of medical office skills. So some of the things we're going to talk about today. We need to talk about our vocab, as always. We're going to hit on every time I talk. It has to do with some vocabulary stuff. We'll explain what personal computer is and identify input and output hardware for personal computers. We'll identify internal computer components, secondary storage devices, and network and internet access devices. We'll explain how to maintain computer hardware and identify the principles of ergonomics that apply to a computer workstation. Then we need to be able to differentiate between system software and application software, electronic medical records, and practice management system. And then we need to explain the importance of data backup and other computer network security activities performed in the healthcare setting, and discuss applications of electronic technology. And then we're going to get into some written communication stuff, being able to recognize the elements of fundamental writing skills, explain the guidelines for using capitalization, numbers, and punctuation in the business communication, describe each component of professional business letters, summarize the formats of business letters and memos, and compose professional correspondences using electronic technology. And that is actually going to be your assignment for this lesson. So let's get started here. The electronic technology in the medical office. Now there's many different types and different things that we use in the medical office, but mainly the most important one is that medical software. Some benefits about medical software: it reduces prices, it saves times, and the main thing is reduced prices. So the reduced price of computer hardware and time these machines save make them well worth your investment in the medical office. But you need to be able to understand the capabilities of the computers and different technology tools you're using in your medical office. So medical assistants need more than just computer literacy in the physician's office. You need to understand what computers are capable of and how those machines work, and that's really what we're going to talk about today through this first part of this lecture. Now it is a long lecture, so please, bear with me. We will get through it together. So personal computer hardwares. So a personal computer is a relatively inexpensive piece of hardware that is used by a single person. It could be desktop, it could be a laptop, something along those lines. There's two different types of hardware. There's system hardware, and that is the stuff that comes on it, okay? The stuff that makes the computer go. So electronic processing devices, it's an electronic processing device that accepts, stores, and processes data. So laptop computers have evolved over the years into thinner, lighter weight models with more functionality. You might see those in the medical office more or less. It's going to be a desktop computer where you are seated. Many new computers have touchscreen panels. You might be dealing with some touchscreen computers, and that's just an added benefit. And here's basically what a touchscreen panel looks like. A lot of laptops nowadays come with this. So this tablet computer and other new computers have touchscreen panels that allow the user to enter data more easily. So you can just touch on the screen and go from there. Kind of like this whiteboard that we use here. So input devices. An input device is a peripheral hardware that allows the user to provide data to the computer. Now those types of input devices could be like a keyboard. So keyboards are the most common type of input device. Okay, you type into the computer. Then you have mouse and other pointing devices. So that inputs data into the computer as well. Like I said, it could be touch screens. So there's a couple different types of touch screens. Okay, there's resistive touch screen and a capacitive touch screen. So a resistive touch screen responds to the touch to almost anything that can generate pressure. A capacitive touch screen responds to the electrical characteristics of a finger that are found in smartphones and other electronic devices. If you try to touch your smartphone with a pencil, it's not going to read it. But if you touch it with your finger, it reads those electrical characteristics of our fingers. There's also acoustic wave touchscreens, and this is a kind of touchscreen that responds to inaudible waves of sound that is created on the screen from a finger. All right, so those are just a couple different things. You don't really need to know too much about those. Just wanted to educate you a little bit about that. And then you have webcams and microphones. And microphones can be used to dictate notes into patients' health records. So those can really be used in the medical office. And then, of course, scanners and signature pads. And in the ambulatory care setting, signature pads are used in the reception area. Patients sign the signature pad, and the signatures are imported into their EHR or their electronic health record as a part of the patient's permanent health record. And then you have output devices. So this is basically the data that was entered into the computer, where the input devices are processed by the computer and displayed using output devices. Now that could be like your computer monitor that you're looking at now. So the higher number of pixels used in the monitor, the clearer the image is. So like a 1080p, that's a high resolution or a high pixel content. So that will come out with a clear picture. And then you have printers and speakers as well. Those all output information from the computer. So let's get into the internal components a little bit of the computer here. So for a desktop computer, the internal components are found in the tower or the case. It's what your screens are sitting on. That is the tower or the case, okay guys? So the central processing unit is also known as the brains of the computer. And then you have random access memory, or a RAM, okay? And that is the working memory of the computer. So that's where you store all your data. And then you have your hard disk drive that reads and writes on hard disks, like your CD drive. So a solid state drive is more expensive than a hard disk drive, and it is not affected by magnetism. Okay, that's the difference between an HDD and an SSD. All right, so most desktops and laptops have a number of USB ports where you can plug in numerous output devices. And that's all included into the motherboard. And that's a platform where all internal computer parts attach, including the primary memory, the hard drive, optical drive, sound and video cards, and ports as well. So that is what your motherboard is. Some secondary storage components or devices, guys. So without a storage device, the computer would be considered a dumb terminal. Okay, you wouldn't be able to do anything or store anything on it. So you need to have secondary storage devices, and these permanently store data until they are replaced or deleted by the user. So there's many different types. Okay, there's a magnetic, which is your internal hard drive or portable hard drives, and then you have optical, which could be like a Blu-ray disc or a CD or a DVD. And then you have flash, which are like jump drives, USB drives, memory sticks, those types of things. So besides storage hardware, the use of cloud storage has become more popular, such as iCloud, where you can upload things to this cloud in the internet world, and you can access that from anywhere. So the capacity of storage devices must be considered when doing that, just like anything, like your phone storage, things like that. Now let's get into network and internet access devices. Okay, so all computers and output devices in a healthcare facility are usually connected to the clinical's network, or which is called a local area network or a LAN. So some healthcare facilities that have clinics at a distance may use a wide area network or a WAN, W-A-N, technology, and that consists of 2 or more local area networks or LANs. Okay, so a router. I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong side here. So a router may be used to allow multiple devices on the same network. Okay, that's where you provide that wireless internet access. Here at Job Corps, all of our computers are connected into the wall. They are not wireless. And then medical office must subscribe to an internet service provider and be connected to a modem. So you have to pay for internet access and have a modem to access the internet as well. Maintaining computer hardware. So the medical assistant must maintain the computer hardware. That is part of your job. So the maintenance level depends on the size of the medical office and whether the medical office has information technology or external support. So if they have an IT program at your office, you might not have to maintain the computers as much. However, if you're a small clinic, you will have to maintain the computers more often. So all computers and peripheral devices should be located on a stable, even surface away from heat surfaces. Liquids and food should be kept away from all devices. And to remove dirt from the keyboard, turn the keyboard upside down and gently shake, or use those compressed air dusters. So a CD or a disc that is should be handled with care. Grasp the outer edges or the center hole. Never just clamp on that CD and get your fingerprints all over it. That promotes scratching and things like that. So keep discs and flash drives out of sunlight and extreme heat. You don't want to damage those discs. So the computer ergonomic workstation. Okay, so ergonomics is the field of study that involves reducing strain or injuries by improving workstation designs. So it is important to arrange your workstation correctly. The torso and the neck should be vertical and in line. You don't want to be crunched over and putting your neck at a strain. For standing workstations, your legs, torso, head, and neck should all be in a vertical line. Okay, you shouldn't be off to the side or bent over all the time. So it's important to change positions about every 30 minutes, and that's especially for you guys too. Get up and stretch and move around so that you are not improving or promoting stress on your body. And preventing repetitive stress injuries is important for all computer users because that's what we do all the time. We're constantly on the computers, so we want to prevent those stress injuries. So here's an example of a good computer workstation ergonomic. All right, so you have many different things. So medical assistants should use ergonomically correct workstation to prevent repetitive stress injuries, as we've talked about. So some equipment helps create this type of workstation, and that includes a footrest. As you can see here, it helps with the angle of her feet. An armrest on her chair, okay, which is C here, the armrest on her chair. You have your lumbar support in your chair coming around there. And then you have your document holder right there, which is putting it at eye level so you're not constantly having to look down. That's why we have your book holders here as well. And then your wrist rest. So we don't have those here, but it is a thing that goes underneath by your wrist so that your wrists are not at such an angle when you're typing. So those are some great tools to look at. So some of the things you need to have, your top of your monitor should just be below your eye level. Your torso and neck should be in a vertical line, as you can see here. They're all lined up. Your back rest support position to support the back. Your lumbar support fits in the small of the back. And then your seat pan height should be adjusted so that your feet are flat on the floor or the footrest. Okay, you see a 90-degree angle right around here on her knees as well. That's a good ergonomically correct workstation. Excuse me. So software used in the medical office. So software, or another term for that could be program, it's basically a set of instructions that operate and perform different tasks. Now, there are two main categories for software. There's system software. Now, system software is a collection of programs that operate and control the computer. Operating systems and utility software are two types of system softwares. And then you have application softwares. And application softwares allow the user or other application programs to perform specific tasks. So database software allows the user to work with large amounts of data stored in a program. So software used in the medical office continued. The EMR, which is an electronic medical record, was a digital version of the paper medical record. So they've taken these charts, these paper medical records, okay? They've taken these paper medical records and they've replaced them with electronic medical records. So EMRs and EHRs are often used interchangeably. When patients' records became electronic or computerized, they were called electronic medical records. Therefore, you got the EMR acronym. EHR allows sharing of information with providers at an outside facility. So EMR is within your facility, EHR is shared within multiple facilities. So I just told you the difference between EMR and EHR. So computer network security. So electronic security is becoming more important in today's society since we do everything online and on the social media aspect. So some common network security procedures by employees include like authorizing who it is, okay? Frequent password changes, logging out of the network when leaving the workstation. Those are just some common security tasks that you guys can do. But most clinics also need to comply with meaningful use requirements. So administrators and employees at work work together to keep the computer network safe. So prevent other users from seeing information on the screen, computer users can apply a privacy filter on the monitors, and that stops other people trying to look over your shoulder as seeing your computer screen. So you have to be seated directly in front of the computer to see what is going on. So administrators also have additional security responsibilities. So for example, a firewall. And that firewall is a program or a hardware device that acts as a barrier or a filter between the network and the internet. And then you have encryption. And encryption software is used to encode or change the information into non-readable or encrypted data. Healthcare agencies, IT departments manage audit trails, and then IT departments also perform security risk analysis as well. So a security risk analysis is if potential threats of network breaches are identified and action plans are instituted to prevent these breaches, then that's why they do those analysis. And then it's also important to perform backup procedures. So backup is a process in which the network files are copied and the copy is stored in a secure off-site location so that if you had computer crashes, everything went up in flames, there was an earthquake, a hurricane, something along those lines, you still have a copy of all that information at another site. So some technology advances in the healthcare. So we have an example here. Bluetooth headsets, okay, are helpful for receptionists and other healthcare facilities who commonly have to make or answer phone calls. So that these, if you just put them on your head, you want to adjust it so that the mouthpiece is about an inch from your mouth. That way you can still talk on the phone and work at your computer station free of your hands at all times. So these are an excellent tool in the medical office. We have this in the switchboard room. So when you get in the switchboard room, practice using it because it is a nice and beneficial tool. Some more technology advances. All right, you could have sign-in sheets that are being replaced with sign-in kiosks. So now instead of going in and signing in on a piece of paper, you can either sign in on a computer or a tablet or something along those lines. Clinics are using wristbands with barcodes now, okay, so that they can correctly identify patients. We've all been there, we've all gone to the hospital and had that wristband put on now. Medical labs, ambulatory surgery centers, and walk-in clinics are using patient tracking systems. And then some clinics are using wireless mobile workstations, where they come into your exam room with like an iPad, and they are doing everything on there. So some clinics use wireless mobile workstations, such as computer on wheels or workstation on wheels, or like I said, which are basically those iPads. Okay. Point of care tools and apps are available for providers to use with exam rooms and with patients, and e-prescribing allows providers to send prescriptions electronically instead of having to send them or deliver them by mail. So with all these advances in technology, medical assistants need to remain flexible and willing to adapt to changes in the workplace, because all these changes are happening all the time. There's always advances in technology, so you have to be ready to take upon any task. So that basically ends the section on technology in the workplace. Now we are getting into the part of written communication. We're really going to dive into some English here, and then some logistics when it comes to mail and writing letters and things like that. So if you look on page 112 in your textbook, okay, let me flip there. On the left-hand side, you're going to see a table 8.3, which is the parts of speech, which is the same one that is up here on my screen. So medical assistants commonly compose emails and letters to patients and readers. So it's important to know all the parts of speech and be able to correctly identify and write. So I'll go over a few of these, but I really want you to look into it, dive into it, and really educate yourself. So a noun is a person, place, or thing. So for an example, you could have a computer. So an example of that would be the medical assistant used the computer. The computer would be a noun in that sentence. A verb is a word or phrase that shows an action or a state of being. So an example of that could be greeted. All right, so the receptionist greeted the patient. Okay, greeted was the verb in that sentence. So medical assistants need to know how to correctly compose a letter and message to others. That's why this is so important here, guys. Now, if you continue on down on page 113, you're going to see table 8.5, and this is commonly confused words. It is important that the reader understands the language used. So this table helps differentiate between different types of words that are commonly confused. Again, read through this, educate yourself. I don't want to drag this presentation along forever. You can do this part, and it's also hard to see on here. So, and then again on page 113, table 8.6, we're using common homonyms. So it is a homonym is something that sounds the same but mean different. So, look at those, educate yourself, guys. Really, it's really important. So capitalization, numbers, and punctuation. So the first letter of the word in a sentence or a question should be capitalized. The pronoun I should always be capitalized. The first letter of proper nouns, such as names or places, should always be capitalized. And then spell out all numbers at the beginning of a sentence. Okay, so if you start the sentence with 3, you're not just going to put the number 3, you're going to spell it out. So a sentence can end with one of 3 types of punctuation marks: a period, a question mark, or an exclamation point. So that's important to know as well. Commas. So if you look on page 114, you're going to see a table that is for the use of commas. So commas are used in written punctuation. Semicolons are used before certain words. For example, however, therefore, for example, and when separating 2 complete sentences in a series. And then a colon is used to introduce a series of items. So to reduce the risk of errors, the medical assistant should check the grammar and proofread the document before sending out to the recipient. You are composing and writing professional letters, emails, memos all the time, guys. So it's really important that it is grammatically correct. So take the time to look it over and double check your work. Now let's get into the parts of a professional letter. Okay, so a professional letter is produced on an 8.5 by 11 paper or a letterhead. That is your common size paper. That is a sheet of paper. That is what all professional letters are produced on. And it typically has 1-inch margins on all 4 sides. So there's many parts to a medical or a professional letter. Some of them are the sender's address. Okay, that is your address. You're sending it from your clinic. You need to put the address on there. The date, the inside address, that's who you're sending it to, and then a reference line, for example. All right, so if we get into the next slide, so whenever you're doing with addresses, if you look on page 115, there are U.S. Postal Service standard sheet suffixes and abbreviations. So if you live on an avenue, okay, the abbreviation is AVE. Or if you're sending it to a bypass or a circle, okay, a bypass would be BYP, a circle would be CIR. So those are all abbreviations that are acceptable by the U.S. Postal Service, so you don't have to write out the entire address. So then you have salutations, which is like Dear John or Dear Mrs. Smith. Your subject line, your body of your letter, that's really the core of the whole purpose of the letter. You have your closing, your signature block, your annotation, and your continuation pages. If you have a letter that requires more than 1 page, the subsequent pages or the pages that follow the first page should be on paper that matches the letter but does not have the letterhead printing. So you only want to use your clinic's letterhead on the front page. All the page after that can be on regular paper. So we're going to talk about the parts of a medical letter. This is on page 116, and we can see everything here. So you have the sender's address in the header of the document. That's like your letterhead, okay? Your date, your inside address, who you're sending this to, your salutation. This one says, Dear Miss Tapia. And then you have your body of your letter, which is really what the letter is about. You have your closing, which is like sincerely. Your signature block shows your name, your references, and your copy notation is all following that. So if you look on page 118 in your textbook now, guys, there's lots of stuff to look at in this page, in this book. Okay, you could look at business letter formats, and this gives you different types of business letters. And it's important to know the difference between the two because you will be asked questions like this on your CMAA exam at the end of the course. So there are 3 main formats to be used to compose a business letter. They are full block format, modified block format, and semi-block format, and we'll talk about all those in a minute. So for your assignment for this section, you're going to need to compose professional correspondences using electronic technology to compose a business letter as well as an email. All right, so it's important to know the different styles of formats and in order to be able to do that. So this is on page 119, an example of a full block letter text, or a full block letter format. And you can notice here the main thing about the full block letter is that they are all the elements of the letter are justified or they are on the left-hand side of the page. So everything is pushed to the left. There's no indentation for the paragraphs. Everything is on that left-hand side. So if you look at the next one, the modified block letter format, which is on page 120 in your textbook, you can show that the modified block letter format showing the date, the closing, and the signature block here, those 3 items are centered, or they start at the center point of the document. So this is the center of the page. After that, that is where those 3 items start. So they're not all left justified anymore. The date, the closing, and the signature line all start at the center point. And then you have semi-block format, which is on page 121. This can also be called modified block with indented paragraphs. So this letter uses right justification for the date, closing, and signature block here. So not the center, not on the left. These 3 things are aligned on the right-hand side. Those are 3 basic types of professional letters. So it's important to know them and to know the differences of them because you will be asked those on your CMAA exam. So letter templates. So using one of the business's letter formats, the medical assistant can design a letter template. All right, so instead of having to write this over and over again, this you can just kind of plug in different names and different information, and it'll help save you time as well. So use practice management software to merge patient data into the letter template to create an individualized letter. You can also mail merge these things, which we will talk about later on when we get into mailing. Okay? So this is an efficient way to provide customer-friendly document for the patient without having to type every single one out individually. So preparing a letter for delivery. This is important, guys. You are asked a lot of questions about mailing and mailing procedures in the CMAA exam. So business letters should be enclosed in business-sized envelopes. So to ensure timely, so this is a business-sized envelope. I wrote the number 10 on here because that is the number, that is the name of the envelope. This is a number 10 style envelope. Another example is a number 6 3/4 type envelope. So you can see the difference. This is the one that is most commonly used in the medical office. Whenever you're sending letters out to patients or any type of communication outside the office, it's most generally this one. This one can be used for like cards or updates or things like that, and some more non-formal things. So to ensure a timely delivery of your mail, type the envelope using simple black font of at least 10-point size. Put 1 space between the city and state and 2 spaces between the state and zip code. So use zip code plus the 4 code as often as possible, and only use approved U.S. Postal Service abbreviations, which we talked about earlier. So do not put anything below the last line of the delivery address on your letter here. So here's an example on page 122 of your textbook of a letter that is correctly written out. So you can see here, your return address is in the upper left-hand corner of your envelope, and use the same format as the delivery address. So your delivery address down here, you have your recipient's name, the company name would go on the second line if you have one. So it could, for example, you could put like Cody Clausen, okay? And then the company name would be Walden Martin Family Medical Clinic. And then you would have the post office box or street address, including the apartment or suite number. And then you have your city, state, and zip code as well. And then of course your postage stamp goes in the upper right-hand corner. That's what a professional business letter should look like. And then you have memos. So memos are communication documents within an agency. So things you send out within the clinic. So it's important to use portrait orientation and 1-inch margins. So this would be portrait orientation. This is landscape orientation. So whenever you send memos out, it's always going to be in portrait orientation. So there's typically 4 headings that you can start these with. They can be to, from, date, or subject. So memos should have the headings justified to the left, and then special notations can be added at the bottom of the memo and are formatted as indicated in the end notations section. So here's an example of a memo. So as we saw here, here's your to, from, date, and subject, and then here is an example. So I'll just go over this one real quick. So this memo says holiday office hours, and it says the office will be closed at noon on December 24th through December 26th. We will open on our normal time on December 27th. We will close at 3 p.m. on the 31st for holiday, and we will reopen at our normal time on January 2nd. So that is an example of an inter-office memo. So professional email. So the medical assistant needs to know how to compose a professional email. So this is the other part of your assignment here, okay? So on 8.2, okay, procedure 8.2, which you will do in your assignment, you'll have to compose that letter and send that email. So here's some tips. Separate the email addresses with semicolons if you're sending it to more than one person, and always start with a greeting, okay? And refrain from using all caps. Now you would refrain from using all caps because it comes across as shouting in an email. It's like you're yelling at the person. Always end with thank yous or sincerely, zip large attachments, and then use the urgent feature for crucial emails that need an immediate response. And then medical assistants must adhere to the facility's confidentiality rules when communicating with or about patients. And then finally, we're going to finish up here with some closing comments. The medical assistant should proofread all documents carefully before printing and sending. Medical assistant should keep a copy of all documents produced using word processing. And then all patient-related documents need to remain confidential, even when you're sending a fax. So even if you're sending a fax, you must adhere to HIPAA and the high-tech rules that we talked about in Chapter 7. So that's the lecture, guys. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask me. Again, this assignment is going to be composing professional letters as well as emails. So really go through those procedures, read step by step, and answer all questions and hit all steps correctly. Have fun and keep up the good work, guys.